Stop. He's already gone. The fire captain's voice cuts through smoke and chaos at a collapsed apartment complex in downtown Seattle. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, calm, composed. The new emergency physician nobody really knows much about kneels beside a lifeless firefighter trapped beneath buckled concrete. No pulse, no breathing, 15 minutes down around her. Helmets shake, boots step back. "Mom, we need to move on." But Sarah doesn't. She shifts her hands. Not standard CPR, lower, angled, pressing into precise points like she's following a rhythm no one else can hear. Her colleague, Ryan Matthews, stares. "Sarah, what are you doing?" She doesn't look up. Something I learned a long time ago. If you want to know who she really is and what happens next, watch till the end and subscribe to Medical Hero Stories, because in the next 3 minutes, she'll change everything you thought you knew about life and death. Downtown Seattle, 5:47 p.m. The air smelled of rain and concrete dust. Sirens wailed between crumbling buildings, and the sky was dark with storm clouds and ash. The radio crackled. Building collapse. Multiple victims, possible entrapment. All units respond. Emergency physician Dr. Sarah Mitchell pulled on her gloves as the rescue vehicle screeched to a halt beside a massive pile of twisted steel and shattered concrete. Her colleague, Ryan Matthews, jumped out first, grabbing the emergency kit. She followed, calm, silent. The kind of calm that didn't come from textbooks, but from surviving things most people never would. "Mitchell, take Section 4, the fire captain yelled over the pandemonium. "We've got 12 people missing." Sarah nodded and moved through the crowd of helmets and respirators. The ground shook beneath her feet as heavy equipment shifted debris overhead. She could hear the faint sound of trapped voices somewhere deep in the wreckage. And then she saw him. A young firefighter, pinned under a massive concrete slab. His uniform jacket torn and bloody, blood streaking down the side of his face. His ID badge read Thomas Rivera, 31. His partner stood nearby, shaking. He's been trapped there nearly 25 minutes. No pulse, no breath, nothing. The fire captain crouched beside her. "Mom, call it, but we've got survivors who still have a chance." Sarah didn't answer. Her fingers touched Thomas's neck, checking again. No pulse, skin cold, pupils fixed. Every indicator screamed, "He's gone!" But something in her eyes changed. A faint, distant focus. She pulled her bag closer. "Sarah." Ryan's voice broke through the radio static. "He's gone. We can't waste resources." She didn't move. "No one's gone until I say they're gone." Ryan frowned. "This isn't CPR territory anymore. He's been down 15 minutes. Sarah's hands hovered over his chest. Not the standard CPR position, not what you'd see in medical school. She shifted lower, angled slightly, pressing her thumbs into 2 points just above the ribs. It looked more like muscle memory than a technique. A firefighter whispered behind her. "What's she doing?" Ryan took a hesitant step forward. "Sarah, that's not in protocol." She didn't answer. Her movements were steady, rhythmic, not frantic, not hurried, like she was following invisible instructions carved into her memory. Someone in the crowd muttered, "She's lost her mind." Then faintly, a sound, a whisper of air passed through Thomas's lips. So soft it could have been the wind. Sarah froze, pressed again. 1, 2. The portable monitor flickered once, a heartbeat. Weak, but there. "Wait!" Ryan leaned closer, shock washing across his face. "No way. He's got a pulse." Sarah exhaled softly, eyes narrowing. "Told you," she said, voice flat. Around her, everything stopped. Firefighters stared, mouths open. The captain stepped back, rubbing his helmet as if he'd witnessed something supernatural. "That's impossible," someone whispered. Sarah didn't react. She just kept working, securing the airway, bandaging the wound, signaling Ryan to prepare the stretcher. When they loaded Thomas onto the gurney, the monitor kept beeping, faint, irregular, but steady. Every beep cut through the chaos like a heartbeat for the entire rescue site. The captain walked beside her, shaking his head. "You said he had no pulse." "How the hell?" She met his eyes, her expression unreadable. Sometimes the textbooks are wrong. The ambulance raced towards Seattle Medical Center. Ryan sat across from her, watching as Sarah manually ventilated Thomas. He was still pale, barely conscious. The rhythmic rise and fall of his chest matched the wail of the siren. Ryan couldn't hold it anymore. "I've been doing this job for 8 years, Sarah. I've never seen anything like that." Her eyes stayed on the patient. "That's because you haven't been where I've been." "Where's that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she checked Thomas's vitals, pulse weak but holding. "Keep pressure on that wound," she said. "We've got 4 minutes till the bay." Ryan hesitated, studying her face. There was something in her tone, something that didn't sound like a normal doctor, more like a combat medic giving orders under fire. They pulled up to the hospital. The ER team rushed out, shouting vitals, prepping Trauma Bay 1. Sarah handed off the gurney, but didn't step away. She watched as the surgeons swarmed around Thomas, cutting through bandages, setting up lines. "Ma'am, you can wait outside," a nurse said politely. Sarah didn't move. "He needs fluids, but not rapid, slow infusion." The attending surgeon frowned. "Who told you that?" "I've seen this kind of crush injury before," she said evenly. "His kidneys can't handle a rapid push." The surgeon glanced at the monitor, then nodded reluctantly. "Good call." As the medical team worked, Ryan leaned against the wall, whispering, "How do you know that?" She just looked at him. "You learn a few things when you've worked on bodies under mortar fire." He blinked. "Mortar? Fire?" But before she could answer, Thomas gasped, a shallow, ragged breath that made the entire room pause. His eyes opened halfway. He looked straight at her. For a long moment, neither moved. "Doc," he whispered weakly, his voice barely audible. "Doc Mitchell, you were in Kandahar." The colour drained from her face. Ryan looked between them, confused. "Doc, he called you doctor." Sarah's voice came out quiet, almost trembling. "He's delirious." Thomas tried to smile even through the pain. "You saved me before. Didn't think I'd see you again." The surgeon froze mid-step. "Wait, what's he talking about?" Sarah stepped back slowly. "He's confused. He needs sedation." Thomas's hand reached toward her wrist, the same way soldiers used to reach for medics they trusted. "You don't forget the person who brought you back," he whispered. The monitor beeped louder now. Ryan whispered under his breath, "What the hell, Sarah?" She turned toward the door, the noise of the ER fading behind her. For the first time all day, her composure cracked, and the weight in her eyes wasn't exhaustion. It was recognition. She'd saved this man before, and the last time she'd done it was on foreign soil. As she walked down the hallway, the hospital lights flickered overhead just for a moment. She stopped, looking up, her reflection broken in the metal ceiling panel. Half doctor, half soldier. The intercom crackled faintly. "Dr. Mitchell, report to Trauma Bay 1. The patient's asking for you." Her heart clenched. She knew what was coming, and she wasn't ready to face it. Not again. She adjusted her gloves, took a breath, and whispered to herself, "Guess ghosts don't stay buried forever." The hallway light steadied, but her steps didn't. She turned back toward the trauma room, toward the man who'd recognized her voice from a war that wasn't supposed to follow her home. Because sometimes the past doesn't knock, it just wakes up. If you believe we should never judge a book by its cover, type "never judge" in the comments. The ICU hummed softly, the sound of controlled chaos. Monitors beeped, machines whispered, and doctors moved like clockwork. But inside Trauma Bay 1, time had stopped. Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood just outside the glass doors, her reflection split in the polished surface. On one side, the uniformed physician everyone knew. On the other, the ghost she'd been running from since Afghanistan. Inside, Thomas Rivera was awake now, pale, weak, but alive. He was talking to a nurse, his voice hoarse. "The woman who brought me in. Is she still here? Dr. Harrison?" The attending surgeon turned to her team. Find the doctor who did that field resuscitation. I want to know exactly what she used. Sarah turned to leave. Too late. The nurse spotted her. She's right here. All eyes swung toward her. She took a quiet breath and stepped inside. Thomas's gaze locked on her instantly. You. His voice trembled between disbelief and gratitude. You were there. Kandahar 2007. The air thickened. Harrison frowned. What's he talking about? Sarah forced a calm tone. He's confused. Post-trauma delirium. No, Thomas said, stronger now. You stitched me up under fire. You dragged me out when everyone else left. A hush rippled through the room. Harrison crossed his arms. You served in Afghanistan. Sarah's eyes lowered. It's not relevant to his treatment. It's relevant to how you brought a clinically dead man back. He shot back. What technique did you use? She hesitated. The technique didn't have a name. Not in civilian medicine anyway. It was born in dust, smoke, and gunfire. Used when equipment failed, and all you had were your hands and a heartbeat you refused to lose. Finally, she said softly, something I learned in a place where we didn't have monitors or textbooks. Ryan stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching her like he was seeing a stranger. You told me you worked trauma in Boston. She looked away. Before that, Harrison leaned forward. Where before that exactly? She didn't answer. Instead, she focused on Thomas's vitals, reading what others might miss. He's stabilizing. Keep him on low-flow oxygen, not high. His lungs won't handle the pressure. Harrison studied her, then finally said, You've seen combat trauma firsthand, haven't you? She didn't respond, but the silence was answer enough. Hours later, the hospital had quieted. Rain tapped faintly against the glass, washing city sirens into a dull hum. Sarah sat alone in the staff lounge, her white coat folded beside her. Ryan entered, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. You should have told me. Told you what? She asked without looking up. That you weren't just some doctor with great instincts. You were military. That guy, Thomas, he wasn't lying, was he? Her jaw tightened. There's nothing to tell. Ryan sat across from her, voice softening. You saved a man everyone else gave up on twice. That doesn't just happen. She finally looked at him, eyes tired. You think I'm proud of it? You think I want to remember what I had to do over there just to keep men breathing long enough to die in a chopper? He didn't reply. She sighed, rubbing her temple. I went into emergency medicine to stop hearing the gunfire in my sleep, not to relive it. Ryan nodded slowly, and now Sarah's gaze drifted toward the ICU down the hall. Now it's back. At 2 a.m., her pager buzzed again. Trauma Bay 1. Vitals dropping, patient coding. She sprinted through the corridor, heart pounding. Inside, Thomas's monitors were screaming. Pressure's crashing, a nurse shouted. We're losing him again. Harrison cursed under his breath. We need to intubate now. Sarah pushed through. No, not like that. His lungs are damaged from collapse pressure. He glared. And what exactly do you suggest, Dr. Mitchell? Her tone was calm, razor sharp. Let me handle it. The team hesitated. Harrison wanted to argue, but her certainty froze him. Everyone step back, she said. She moved quickly, methodically, adjusting his airway manually, controlling pressure with nothing but a hand seal and her own breath coordination. Her other hand pressed into a series of calculated points across his sternum. The nurses watched wide-eyed. It looked unorthodox, wrong even, but the monitor began to blink again, faintly, then stronger. Thomas gasped. Harrison exhaled, stunned. How did you know that would work? Sarah's voice was low, because it worked once before, in a field hospital outside Kabul. She didn't stay to explain. She stepped back, pulled off her gloves, and walked out before anyone could stop her. Outside the trauma room, she leaned against the wall, shaking for years. She tried to bury that part of herself. The medic who treated gunshot wounds under blackout tents. the woman who once held dying soldiers and whispered that help was coming when she knew it wasn't. Now, it was all unraveling. The next morning, sunlight poured across the hospital parking lot. Sarah sat in the back of the ambulance, watching it warm the wet pavement. Ryan joined her quietly. "He's stable. The doctors can't explain how." Sarah smiled faintly. "They don't have to. You know what they're saying, right?" He added that whatever you did, it's not something a civilian doctor should know. She looked down at her hands that had stitched torn skin by flashlight that had pressed on wounds that never stopped bleeding. "Maybe not," she said softly. "But it saved him, and that's all that matters." Ryan nodded slowly. "He's asking for you." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes met the reflection of herself in the ambulance mirror. Tired, steady, unshakable. "Tell him I'll check in later." As he left, she whispered to herself, "Once you start saving lives that should have been lost, it's hard to stop." The hum of the hospital faded behind her, replaced by something deeper, the echo of memory, of dust and war, and voices calling for medics that never came. She closed her eyes. In the darkness, she could still hear it. "Doc Mitchell, we're hit. We're going down." And she realized with a quiet ache, she'd never really come home. If you've ever believed that courage doesn't end when the war does, type respect in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to honor every hero who kept fighting even after the battle ended. The morning broke grey and cold over Seattle Medical Center. Rain misted against the glass, tracing thin, silver lines down the windows of the trauma wing. Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood in the supply corridor, hands braced on the counter, eyes unfocused. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same image: a desert tent, smoke rising, and the sound of men calling for a medic. Behind her, the door creaked open. Dr. Harrison stepped in, coffee in hand. "You planning on hiding in here forever?" Sarah straightened, her voice calm. "Just restocking supplies." He leaned against the doorframe, studying her. "You saved a man with no pulse for 15 minutes. The board wants a report, and frankly, so do I." "I used field-modified compressions," she said quietly. "Low-angle pressure to stimulate coronary flow. Afghanistan, war, Kandahar." The words hung in the air like something she'd never meant to say aloud again. Harrison exhaled. "That explains it." Sarah's brow creased. "Explains what?" "Why you don't panic," he said. "Why your hands move before your brain does." Before she could respond, a loudspeaker cracked overhead. "All trauma personnel to Bay 2. Multiple incoming from bridge collapse." Harrison pushed off the wall. "Let's move." The ER erupted into motion once more. Stretchers rolled in, wheels squealing across the tile. Gasoline, rain, and adrenaline filled the air. Sarah moved to the first gurney. A teenage girl, barely 17, with metal embedded in her abdomen. Behind her, 2 more, one critical, one unresponsive. "Vitals are dropping," a nurse shouted. Harrison barked orders to the team. "We need intubation kits. Start 2 IVs now." Sarah crouched by the unresponsive patient, a woman in her 50s. The pattern of trauma made her pause. No visible bleeding, chest collapse, signs of blunt cardiac arrest. She reached instinctively for the carotid pulse. Nothing. Another code. Someone yelled, "She's gone." But Sarah's voice cut through the noise. "No, she's not." Her hands were already moving. Same angled compressions, same rhythm. The room froze as she shifted into the sequence that wasn't in any manual. "Mitchell, what are you doing?" Harrison demanded. She didn't answer. "Somebody hold the light steady." The nurse obeyed without thinking. Sarah adjusted her palms again, 2 centimeters lower, 3 seconds longer between compressions. "Keep the airway clear." The monitor stayed flat for 5, 10, 15 seconds, then a faint blip, 1 heartbeat, then another. The nurses gasped. Harrison blinked hard. "No way. That's impossible." Sarah exhaled, steadying herself. "It's not impossible, it's memory." As the patient stabilized, Harrison whispered, "You just brought another one back. Her jaw tightened. It's not resurrection, doctor, it's timing. But deep down she knew it was something else, something no textbook could measure. That night, the news broke. Doctor saves 2 lives declared dead. Physicians baffled, reporters gathered outside the hospital, cameras flashed at the entrance. Inside, whispers filled the hallways. Ryan found her sitting on the back bumper of the ambulance, staring at the storm clouds rolling over the city. "They're calling you the miracle doctor now," he said with a small smile. She didn't return it. "I didn't ask for that." He sat beside her. "No, but you earned it." Her voice dropped low. "You weren't there, Ryan. You didn't see what happens when it doesn't work. The faces, the silence." He watched her carefully. "That's the past, Sarah." She turned to him, eyes fierce. "No, that's what's coming if I keep doing this. Every time I use that technique, I gamble with something I don't fully understand anymore." Before Ryan could respond, footsteps echoed from the corridor. Dr. Harrison approached with 2 men in dark suits, one carrying a badge, the other a folder stamped Department of Defense. Sarah's stomach sank. "Dr. Mitchell," the taller one said, voice clipped, "we need to speak with you privately." Ryan frowned. About what? The agent didn't look at him. About what she brought back from Afghanistan. The small conference room was sterile, windowless, humming faintly with the sound of fluorescent lights. Sarah sat across from the 2 men, her posture rigid. Harrison waited outside, pacing. The agent opened the folder. Inside, grainy photos, desert tents, combat medics under fire, a younger version of her face streaked with blood and sand. He tapped one photo. "Kandahar, 2007, Army Special Forces combat medic, Captain Sarah Mitchell. You participated in Operation Phoenix." She nodded once. "I did. Then you already know what we're about to say." She folded her arms. "Try me." The man leaned forward. "That resuscitation method you used, we recognize it. Classified field trial protocols developed under the Department of Defense Medical Research. It was abandoned after 15 failed trials." Sarah's throat went dry. "It wasn't abandoned," she said. "We used it in the field." "Not legally," the second agent replied. "Those experiments weren't authorized for civilian use. You were ordered to destroy all records." She met his gaze steady. "So now you're here to take it back?" "Number," he said. "We're here because you just proved it works." The silence that followed was suffocating. He slid a form across the table. "The Pentagon wants to reopen the program, under supervision this time. You'll train others. Share your method." Sarah stared at the paper. "No, you don't have a choice," the man said flatly, her voice hardened. "I always have a choice, and I choose to save people, not weaponize medicine again." He smirked faintly. "You think this is about saving lives. Everything is about what can be controlled." Before she could respond, the second agent's radio crackled. "Unit command copy. We've got movement outside Trauma Bay 1. Sarah stood alarmed. "Thomas." The agent's expression shifted. "Stay here." But she was already gone, running down the hall. The ICU lights strobed red as alarms blared. Thomas was thrashing against the restraints, shouting through pain. Nurses struggled to hold him down. "Sir, you need to calm down." He gasped, eyes wide with terror. "They found us. They found her." Sarah forced her way through. "Thomas, look at me." He turned, pale and shaking. "You don't understand. Phoenix wasn't just medicine. It was a weapon. The things they taught us, they weren't meant to heal." "Who's they?" she demanded. Before he could answer, the monitors spiked, then flatlined again. "Code Blue!" someone shouted. Sarah froze, her heart pounding. Harrison reached for her shoulder. "Sarah, we have to." But she was already at the bedside, her hands finding the rhythm that had haunted her since the war. Her voice was a whisper. "Not again. Not this time." And as the alarms wailed and doctors scrambled around her, she pressed her palms into his chest, not just fighting for his life, but for the truth buried with it. Because this time, what she was trying to save wasn't just a man. It was everything she'd once believed medicine stood for. And deep down, she knew the war she thought she'd left behind had just followed her home. Rain hammered the roof of Seattle Medical Center, the kind of Pacific Northwest storm that only came once a year. Fierce, unrelenting, cleansing. Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood by the observation window of Trauma Bay 1, her reflection ghosting against the glass. Behind her, Thomas Rivera's bed was empty. The man she'd brought back from the dead was gone again. Not dead, just gone. The agents had moved him before sunrise. No name on the transport, no record in the hospital system. Just like Kandahar all over again. Dr. Harrison entered quietly, hands in his coat pockets. "They took him," she said before he could speak. He nodded, said it was a security matter. Sarah turned from the window, her voice hollow. "He was a patient, not a weapon." "Not to them," Harrison said. "You proved something they thought impossible." She looked at him sharply. "That's not a reason to erase someone." He studied her a moment, then lowered his voice. "They left this for you." He handed her a sealed envelope, military markings faint under the hospital's fluorescent light. Inside, a single photo. Thomas sitting up alive. On the back, 3 words written in black ink. "They're watching you." Her pulse slowed. Then they'll see what happens when they try this again. That night, the hospital's emergency lights flared back to red. "Train derailment. Interstate 5. A nurse shouted. 5 critical, 1 cardiac. Sarah was already pulling gloves over trembling hands. The trauma bay came alive. Metal trays, crash carts, shouted orders. But amid the chaos, a strange calm settled in her chest. The first patient was a young soldier, uniform scorched, dog tags half melted. His pulse flickered, then vanished. A voice beside her, Ryan's, broke through the noise. "Sarah, his heart's gone." She stared at the monitor, flat line again. Her mind flashed to Kandahar. A sandstorm, a burning convoy, the same sound of someone saying he's gone. She looked at Ryan. "Move the light lower, 2 inches off center." He hesitated. "You're doing it again, aren't you?" "Trust me," she said quietly. Her hands moved in the pattern she thought she'd buried. Low pressure, circular rhythm, deliberate pauses. The room's chaos dimmed to a hum. Even Harrison standing behind her didn't speak. Seconds passed, then a blip. Weak, then steady. The soldier coughed, eyes fluttering open. The crowd exhaled as if they'd been holding their breath with him. Harrison's voice trembled. "That shouldn't be possible." Sarah stripped off her gloves. "Neither was Kandahar," she said softly. "And yet, here we are." The next morning, a conference call was waiting for her. 3 officials on screen. No names, just ranks. "Captain Mitchell," one said. "You've made headlines again." "It's Dr. Mitchell now," she corrected. The man smirked. "Not for long. The department is reinstating Project Phoenix. We want you to lead it." Sarah folded her arms. "You mean weaponize it?" He leaned forward. "We mean control it. You can either help us or disappear with it." Her voice was steady. "You already tried that once. It didn't work." The call ended abruptly. The screen went black. She sat in silence for a long time before Ryan appeared in the doorway. "You're really not going to take it, are you?" Sarah looked out at the rain streaking the window. "If they turn this into something it's not, people die again." He stepped closer. "Then what do you do?" Her jaw tightened. "I make sure no one else ever needs to use it." 2 weeks later, Seattle Medical Center's trauma wing was busier than ever. But something had changed. Sarah stood at the head of a group of young residents, teaching, not commanding. She demonstrated chest placement, breathing intervals, emergency response under blackout conditions. They should be in hands. He nodded slowly. "You've turned pain into purpose, Sarah. Not everyone gets that chance." Her eyes drifted to the old photo of her Special Forces unit pinned to her locker, faces half faded, smiles half remembered. Maybe that's what this was all for. she said softly to make sure they didn't die for nothing. The intercom buzzed again. Trauma, Team Bay, 3 critical, inbound. Sarah exhaled, pulling on her gloves. Ryan grinned from across the hall. You ready? She smiled faintly. Always. As the door swung open, the storm outside broke into sunlight. The day felt new again, the kind that carried both grief and grace in equal measure. And if you've been with Sarah through every second of her story, from the sandstorms of Kandahar to the chaos of Seattle Medical Center, then you already know this isn't just about medicine. It's about courage when there's nothing left to believe in, about fighting when everyone else says stop. If you believe that some heroes don't wear rank and they just refuse to quit, then please subscribe to the channel, because every time you do, it tells us these stories still matter. And somewhere out there, another medic, another nurse, another forgotten veteran might remember that they do.